Hello, and it's time for a little How To Tuesday. I will be demonstrating the knit two together. So if you're curious about that decrease, or if you'd like to see how it's done, if you've never done it before, then stay tuned. I'm Aradia Noire. I'm the resident witch and creatrix over at Aradia's Hand and Nays Divine, where I create myth, magic, and meaning for your everyday life through art, intuition, and energy work. So I want to do a short video, as promised, about how to do the knit two together. And it's very common decrease. It's very popular. It's for a lot of people, it is their go-to decrease. It is the one they like to use. It's the easiest to remember. You're just working two stitches together, decreasing by one, and you don't have a whole lot of steps in order that you need to remember. So the first thing I want to say about this is this is a right slanting decrease. So you see that I've made this little swatch up to this point, given it a garter stitch border so it would lay flat. And if you're curious about garter stitch, I'm going to be making a video about that stitch pattern, so don't worry. And I'll link it below once it's made. But as you can see, the stitches all are leaning to the right. So that is why it's called a right slanting decrease. And on a left slanting decrease, it would orient the other way, obviously. And there's one or two decreases I've seen or heard of that the slant is a lot more slight, and so sometimes those can be desirable when you don't want it really, really noticeable that you've decreased a stitch. Now, what I will say is this is presuming that you are doing a knit two together on the knit side. If you were the knit side is the wrong side, and so you were doing the decrease on the back of the work, it would be a left slanting decrease, right? So that's a really important thing. It's always assumed that you're talking about doing the decrease on the right side, and a lot of decreases are done on the right side. But just as a point of clarification, because I'm going to talk a little more about it on the Purl Two Together video that will be coming up soon, shortly after this. So, as you see, I've done a couple of rows here, and I've left it so that I've got two decreases left that I can show you. So you'll need yarn and needles, just for the purposes of doing the decrease. That's all you need. And this is good for when you want to decrease a single stitch. So the final thing I want to say is that when you're using decreases, a lot of times they can be paired together. So if you were working on a sleeve or a sweater that's worked in the round or something to that effect, where there are not that many decreases, then a lot of times they can be paired together, and that way you'll have this even cinching effect on either side, or a tapering effect, versus having this line of diagonals in a certain direction. Now, when it comes to something like a hat, where it's a little less noticeable, a lot of times people will pick one decrease, and that's just what they'll do. And there you go. So we're gonna work our border stitches. And I've been decreasing on the last two stitches, so we'll work to the last two. And now here's what you're going to do. You're going to work both of these stitches as if they are one. As you can see, I knit continental and I knit combination. And I knit combination my way. So if you're curious as to what that means, I'll link the videos below so that you can see them. But the way I work in the front of the loop, and so you will enter into the front of the loop through both. You will yarn over, and you very carefully draw, very carefully draw that stitch through, and you've decreased one stitch. And so as you can see, it's already leaning to the right there. So I'm going to knit in pattern to keep the integrity of this, so we can do our last decrease. All right, so again, we're going to knit our border, and then I'm going to work a stitch, and then we're going to go to these last 2 stitches and work them. So again, you insert the needle into both stitches, yarn over, and very carefully draw it through, and you've decreased 1 more stitch. So as you can see, right, it's got a nice little slant to it, and that right there is the knit 2 together. So for giggles, we'll do 1 more, so you can see it 1 more time. So I'm going to work our 2 border stitches. And I'm going to work these 2 stitches together, yarn over. You decreased your last stitch. So here we go, a nice little clear right slant. And I hope you enjoyed this. I would love to hear from you. Have you used this technique before? Did you like it or not? Do you have another decrease that you like better? And if you go to the link section below in the description box, I'm going to share other right slanting decreases. I'm going to share the left slanting decrease that goes with this when worked on the same side. And then you'll also see the garter stitch, my combination, and continental knitting, so that you can be familiar with all those terms. And that's it. So thank you for joining me on this How To Tuesday and learning how to do a knit 2 together, a right slanting decrease. And I wish you happy knitting!